Hey guys, Jason Ribi here with another Lynx Masterclass session. Today we're going to talk about riser and handlebar setup. There are three areas of primary focus when setting up your handlebars: angle of the riser in relation to the steering post, handlebar rotation in the riser, and the position of your handlebar control, so brake and throttle position. So before we get started, let's grab the tools we're going to need to get the job done. You're going to need a Torx T40, an 8mm socket or wrench, and a 4mm Allen to adjust your throttle. So before I start any of my adjustments on my sled, I like to make sure that my riser is completely in line with my steering post. So the point of keeping the riser in line with the steering post is more so to keep a one axis that it's turning on versus having a swing out of your handlebars. If everything's lined up, it turns off one pivot point. If you have the riser adjusted forward or back, now you're starting to swing the handlebars around that turning axis, which gives a lot of interesting and weird feedback to the handlebars. So pretty simple to adjust the riser angle. Obviously just loosening the bolts, moving the riser into alignment with the steering post, and then retightening them. In the event that you folded the handlebars over or had an impact, sometimes it's advantageous to pull the riser off, clean the knurling, and so it can get a good bite on the steering post again, or it's more likely to slip easier again after that. So the next thing you're going to want to do is set the rotation of your handlebars. All you're going to do is grab your T40 Torx or a 10mm socket, loosen the clamps off, and then adjust the rotation of the handlebars by looking at the numbers on the bars, and then also just keeping in mind to keep them centered in the riser. It's a little bit more personal preference here. For me, I like to run them at sort of -0.5, and the idea for me is kind of keeping my elbows rotated out and up in that attack position. Finally, we'll take a look at how I set up my throttle and brake lever. So easy to adjust your brake lever on it just by loosening the two 8mm bolts that hold the top of the reservoir, turning it to your desired position, and then retorquing the bolts down. I like to keep the lever in line or level with the top of the handlebar, and I also like to move it over. And so both sides of that, the moving it over, I want to keep my finger right at the very end of the lever, because always riding with one finger on the brake, I always have the most amount of leverage on the brake with the least amount of grip strength needed. The second part of that, being level with the handlebar, is the idea that on a snowmobile or mountain riding, you move so much on the snowmobile that I always have the most amount of strength in my hand and in my arm without having my wrist broken at the corner as I get away from the snowmobile. So maintaining like the utmost control of the brake at all times. As a personal preference, when I tighten my brake lever down to the handlebar, I'm obviously not trying to weld it to the handlebars, and I want to keep it loose enough that in case it does run into a tree or something or get bumped, that it's not actually going to break the brake lever. It can just rotate around the handlebar, and then so, you know, a pretty firm grip on it with two hands, I should be able to just move it just a little bit. Also with the throttle, I like to slide it in off the grip a little bit, and the same area is that we move a lot on it. So when I'm getting, or the snowmobile is getting away from me, I can get as far over as I possibly can while maintaining control of the handlebars. So same idea when I tighten the throttle down on my snowmobile. I want to keep it just tight enough that it can move if it hits something. And then just taking note to remember that with these snowmobiles and the painted handlebars, that set screw will actually kind of drill into the paint on it, and that kind of needs to be tightened up over time a little bit as it moves around. So there we go. You got the way I set up my handlebars on my Lynx snowmobile. If you guys have more questions on setup, make sure you tune into the master classes to come.